Hello again. I must begin with an apology here because I've mixed up my sequencing. So I've had to re-edit. So a 3 is a 4, and I'm sure you'll catch on. Um, but it's amended now in the sequence of the statement. Um, One finds oneself a little under stress after the active state terror myself and my wife had to endure, and we still fear for ourselves in that respect. And it's one of the things states do when you start to identify very inconvenient things and corruption. They'd rather be hidden. Um, they try to exert enormous humiliation and well, possibly financial, but psychological abuse on you. But back to the statement. So, whilst I believe John acted wrongly, and I do, and I could not understand why he was not allowed sterile access to the data in the course of answering allegations made against him. So, what I mean, that relates to the wealth tech servers. Um, I have had an insight into this process now. Data gets taken away, um, and they liked to cherry pick things, distort things, and that's what happened to me, and try to put you under stress for a situation where you have to answer without seeing the full context of things. And what I meant here is the FCA and Northumbria Police would have taken away the wealth tech server's key body of evidence. He would probably, over a period of time, had to sit interviews. He would have been asked about various things, and to answer that question, you know, put to him, he would need access to his data. So they should have been taken away, secured, put in a sterile form, read only, so both sides could have access to it at certain times. Needs to be an audit process to make sure all the data was intact, nothing had been manipulated or removed, given the conflicts of interest between the FCA's catastrophic failures as a regulator, failing in consumer protection, and also acting as prosecutor. So that's what I meant here. In the meantime, my associates and I started to investigate the FCA in the context of a broad range of catastrophic failures in this case and others. The conflict of interest was a particular area of interest to us. That's true, I've made that clear. It leads to a situation where the protection of the reputation of the regulator is given a higher priority than the welfare of um, the victims of financial scandals. And those financial scandals are often um, facilitated, if you like, by catastrophic FCA failures. And the Woodford example I've told you, Woodford, I didn't agree with the structure of the fund, um, but he was very transparent in what he was doing. People could have access to websites, see all the portfolio holdings. That obviously changed, understandably, when liquidity concerns arose. And um, you know, the FCA would have had full access to that. And in the context of Link, when they took action, there's going to be some dispute over whether their actions were correct. Um, my understanding is kept the FCA informed what they were doing, and we ended up with a sad situation where clients saw assets fire sold, suffered very large losses. Um, and the FCA knew they couldn't take enforcement or legal action against Link, because Link would just say, well, you knew all about this and you were kept informed. So you saw the process lead this way. So they had to engage in this scheme of arrangement where clients got some money, but ultimately not as much as they probably should have got back, because the process was more about protecting, or the process would rank the protection of the FCA's reputation above the uh, the victims of the scandal. And I believe fundamentally their losses should have been largely covered by the Treasury as a result of the FCA failings. So back to the statement. A date in October 2023 was agreed in Newcastle for my compelled interview. Standard of questions indicated a weak understanding of the situation in duration and scale. So duration of the alleged fraud at WealthTech and the scale of it. There was also an undeveloped understanding of the operations of the business. It was like that. Standard of the questions from the interviewers was exceptionally poor at start. They started to get a bit more of a grasp of it when I gave them context. Given the time that had elapsed over that, and the FCA's narrative of breathtaking speed of the investigation, it was very, very poor. And then, as I've said, after I published Lost to the Races, there's been 3 referrals I've made to the FCA, and they are all people that a trainee investigator would know how to find. This aside, I provided considerable intelligence both during and after the interview. During the interview process, I received 2 threats about conducting my own investigation. One from Richard Middleditch during the interval in the foyer of the hotel, and another of a similar nature from Jennifer Hepworth after the interview had concluded. The interview gets broken down into different bits and bobs. You're allowed some time out. And as I said previously, I don't think either of them really are particularly mission. I wouldn't judge them as being malicious. I think they were sent to do something they probably didn't enjoy doing. That was they become aware that I was looking into these conflicts of interest, and they were very annoyed about it, and they weren't happy with the fact that I'd chosen not to provide a witness statement because I wanted them to confront the realities of their own catastrophic failures and understand the impact that it had on consumers of the wealth tech clients, and and understand the humanity of that and engage with them and do something to help them. And there were no reassurances or any dialogue. They weren't interested. As I said, middle ditch. I was sat in the foyer looking at my phone, and he made what I consider a veiled threat, saying, "You're not, don't go conducting your own investigations." I considered it a veiled threat against my career, essentially. And Hepworth, similar at the end of the interview, although she tried to press a bit on the witness statement, and I said that the conditions weren't right to do that. I needed to see some greater understanding of the implications of the catastrophic failures, and also how these corrosive conflicts of interest would be managed. I explained the work related to the FCA regulatory failure and the impact on the victims of the scandal in the context of the noted conflicts of interest. I reiterated that I would not provide a witness statement. Whilst the threats were not particularly menacing, I felt my decision of not providing a witness statement was poorly received. So that I don't need to expand on that. I've just spoken about that. I followed up the meeting with further information. I did provide a good deal of further information because I could see that their understanding was exceptionally weak at that time. And even after Lost to the Races book was published, people came to me, and I suggested that they speak to the FCA, and interviews were conducted. But these are people that a very, very low level investigator would have found without me needing to help. And I'd also note that threats have been followed up since by other members of staff. As we moved towards the end of 2023 and into 2024, I was made aware of further client suffering this made me very sad, and it did. There were people going through terrible things, recourse to food banks, having to rely on emergency loans, possibly selling property, not being able to pay for carers. There was real human cost to this, and it did bother me. And I explained that in the how I was torn during my time at the business, because I was constantly trying to weigh up how I could fix all these issues. But the FCA showed no humanity towards these people. I informed the FCA that our investigation had identified devastating failures from the FCA, covering intelligence, supervision, enforcement, and money laundering. Indeed, it has, and that's why they're using prejudice to hide behind this. And it's also because if you consider with the secondary objective, if you knew the full scale of their failures, it's not going to sit well with a narrative where the Chancellor and her colleagues are trying to encourage people to put more money in the stock market and take more risk. When essentially some of the failures um, would have embarrassed the frontier market. I explained that because of the conflict of interest and lack of contrition by the FCA, I did not consent to my material being used in the legal process. I did, however, remain open to providing intelligence, which I did. But yeah, I don't consent to it. Um, the conflicts of interest are horrendous. And I've always believed that this, they say, well, because of FISMA, we're the prosecutor, da, 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 da. But this is supported by a terrible, terrible conflict of interest. And I think it would have been better off if a neutral agency like the Serious Fraud Authority would have looked at it and taken it on. Because, as far as I'm aware, FISMA says that the FCA doesn't. Nothing there that says that it can't pass the case to someone else in the right circumstances. This was refused by Anthony Williams. I stated that I wished to report my concerns to the court. Williams intimated that the court would not engage and concerns should be addressed to him and Hepworth. Now, how can you address concerns to people who are part of the problem? Because, yeah, classic cul-de-sac, I guess. Um, and, you know, it shows how ill the system is because you are told that you can't raise these concerns with a court. Now, I believe I was perfectly entitled to do so, but they just didn't want me to because these issues were very inconvenient to them. But you consider the ridiculous nature of you have to report concerns to the people who are the um, source of those concerns. It's extraordinary. Anyway, that's it for this leg. For what it's worth, I don't think they will. I'm going to go through the statement. The statement is helping with my mental health. I'm not insane. I've received some support from Crisis. It's helped. But actually, my mind's very sharp in other ways. But I feel I have to go through this and I have to tell the story. I do believe they won't accept this statement, and I believe that's probably been decided already because they're trying to work on a solution of what to do with me before 2027. I won't be around by one means or another. It would be what I would assess that to be. But I need to tell a story, and people need to know. Take care.